The static crackle of a protest megaphone collides with the ghostly echo of Gregorian chant. "The saints warned us!" a voice shrieks, drowned by the roar of a crowd waving signs that splice medieval Latin with QAnon slogans. Somewhere between the 12th century and the algorithmic chaos of now, the cryptic visions of Saint Malachy, a shadowy Irish monk who supposedly foresaw the end of the Catholic Church, morphed into a weaponized myth, stitching together anti-vax, mobs, far-right manifestos, and the digital fever dreams of Q. His story is a warning: history's ghosts never die. They simply wait for the right moment to haunt. It began in 1139 in the rain-lashed monasteries of Ireland. Malachy, a bishop cloaked in humility and political cunning, claimed divine visions of 112 future popes, culminating in apocalyptic collapse. In the final persecution, the Holy Roman Church will be destroyed, and judgment will come. Forgotten for centuries, the Prophecies resurfaced in 1595, printed clandestinely by a rogue Catholic faction. Scholars scoffed. No original manuscript existed, yet doubt only fed the legend. By the 1950s, doomsday cults latched onto Malachy's last pope as code for nuclear annihilation. But the internet would transform his vague Latin verses into something far darker, a meme. The 21st century digitized the Middle Ages. Algorithms pried open dusty archives, spitting Malachy's words into forums where QAnon's Great Awakening collided with anti-vax paranoia. His prophecies, once confined to esoteric Catholic debates, became a Rorschach test for chaos. Peter the Roman, Malachy's final pope, was rebranded as a stand-in for globalist cabals, a Vatican puppet master pulling strings from Davos to DC. Conspiracy influencers dissected his phrases like scripture. Rome destroyed? That's the deep state. Final persecution. COVID lockdowns. The past wasn't prologue. It was a prophecy hacked to fit every panic. But why Malachy? Why now? The answer lies in the seductive alchemy of ambiguity. His words are empty, vessels filling with whatever dread we pour into them. A cognitive scientist might call it apophenia, the mind's desperate hunt for patterns in noise. A historian would recognize the oldest trick in the cult leader's playbook: weaponizing. Nostalgia for a simpler, sacred past. Malachy's prophecies thrive because they're ancient enough to feel sacred, vague enough to feel true. They whisper that someone, anyone, once knew how this all ends. Listen closer, and the parallels curdle. In 2012, as End Times Prophecies surged online, Reddit users mapped Malachy's last pope to Benedict XVI's resignation, proof the Vatican was rigging the apocalypse. By 2020, anti-vax protesters invoked his tribulations to frame vaccine passports as steps toward a new world order. And when QAnon's storm failed to materialize, true believers pivoted. Malachy's final pope was coming. The storm was just delayed. The cycle is unbreakable because faith in prophecy isn't about truth, it's about control. Yet beneath the frenzy lies a darker truth. Malachy's myth exposes how easily the past can be distorted into a weapon. His prophecies, likely forged during the Reformation, were meant to destabilize the Church. 9 centuries later, they destabilize reality itself. The same rhetorical tricks, elite corruption, divine reckoning, us versus the martyrdom that fueled medieval power struggles now fuel TikTok sermons and Capitol riots. The soundtrack has changed, eerie synths instead of monastic choirs. But the hunger remains, for meaning, for order, for a villain to blame. Malachy's legacy isn't prophecy. It's proof that the line between history and conspiracy is thinner than we dare admit. One day another myth will rise, another saint, another cipher, and we'll repeat the dance, mistaking our reflection in the void for a glimpse of destiny. What makes the text so haunting isn't its accuracy, it's its elasticity. The verses are a blank canvas, splattered with the anxieties of every age. When Napoleon stormed Rome in 1798, zealots declared Malachy vindicated. When Pius IX fled Vatican City in 1848, doomsayers brandished the scrolls like torches. Yet the darkest twist lies in the ambiguity of their origins. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a paleographer, notes in a crackling audio clip, "The Latin syntax is too modern. The prophecies predict popes up to the 1590s with eerie precision, then grow fuzzy. It's like a forger got tired." But try telling that to a QAnon believer. The same lack of proof that discredits Malachy for scholars, the missing manuscript, the historical gaps, only deepens the mystique for conspiracists. Absence becomes evidence. A vacuum where faith rushes in. By the 1950s, Malachy's last. Pope had fused with atomic age paranoia. Radio preachers framed the Cold War as the final persecution, the mushroom cloud as God's judgment. Yet the prophecy's true metamorphosis came in the digital age. Online forums stripped them of context, repackaging fragments as viral breadcrumbs. A Reddit user in 2012 noted that Pope Benedict XVI's "The Glory of the Olive" resigned just years after Malachy's text predicted the end. Proof of a Vatican cover-up. Conspiracists ignored Benedict's peaceful retirement, twisting his exit into a coded warning. The prophecies, once confined to parchment, now pulsed through fiber-optic cables, feeding algorithms hungry for outrage. Malachy's genius, or his forgers, was understanding that prophecy isn't about truth. It's about yearning. The human need to believe that chaos has a pattern, that suffering has a purpose. His words, forged or divine, endure because they are a mirror. Stare into them, and you'll see your own fears reflected. The shadow of a coming storm, the face of an enemy, the desperate hope that anyone knows what happens next. The mist clung to Ireland's monasteries like a shroud in the 12th century, a land where faith and fear danced in the shadow of Viking raids and crumbling kingdoms. Into this world of flickering candlelight and whispered psalms stepped an Malachy of Armagh, a bishop cloaked in contradictions. To his followers he was a living saint, a reformer who purified corrupt churches and communed with angels. To his enemies, he was a political operator, maneuvering through the chaos of feudal Ireland with cold pragmatism. But it was his deathbed act, a scroll of cryptic Latin verses titled "The Prophecy of the Popes," that would etch his name into eternity. The text claimed to unveil the fate of 112 future pontiffs, ending with chilling finality. In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Rome will be destroyed, and the judge will come. Monks copied the words with trembling hands, their ink smudged by sweat and candle smoke. Was this divine revelation political propaganda or the fever dream of a dying man? Even now, no one agrees. Modern historians dissect the prophecies like a coroner probing a cold case. Dr. Eleanor Byrne, a medievalist, recounts Malachy's life in a voice edged with skepticism. He was a fixer, a man who negotiated between warring clans and Rome. The prophecies read less like mysticism and more like a power play. She notes eerie coincidences. Malachy's death in 1148 coincided with a papal schism, and his visions conveniently predicted a line of popes that ended with his own era. It's a resume, not a revelation, she argues. He was auditioning for sainthood. Yet the verse's vagueness defies easy dismissal. Each pope is reduced to a poetic epithet. From the roar of the lion for Urban VIII, whose coat of arms bore a lion, The glory of the olive, for Benedict XVI, whose namesake order symbolized peace. Coincidence, design, or the human brain's knack for forcing meaning onto chaos? For centuries, the prophecies gathered dust, dismissed as monastic fan fiction, until the printing press resurrected them in 1595. A rogue Catholic faction, desperate to undermine Pope Clement VIII, published the text as proof of divine disfavor. Suddenly, Europe's rumor mills churned. Scholars like Farce Lucien Marchetti, whose clipped tones echo in an archival recording, denounced it as a Renaissance hoax, too polished, too convenient for the anti-papal mood. No original manuscript survived, only copies riddled with anachronisms, yet the doubt itself became fuel. By 1595, the church was fracturing, and Malachy's words offered a script for the apocalypse. A pope's sudden death in 1605 was hailed as fulfillment. His successor's rise, a countdown to doom. The prophecies, like a virus, mutated to fit each new panic. The 1950s pulsed with a Cold War dread that seeped into every shadow, every whispered prayer. As mushroom clouds loomed in humanity's imagination, doomsday cults clawed through ancient texts for clues to the end, and found Saint Malachy's last pope prophecy waiting like a dormant virus. Radio preachers, their voices crackling, through static, spun the Irish saint's 12th century visions into atomic age gospel. The final pope will reign as fire rains from heaven. One thundered, splicing Malachy's vague Latin verses with headlines about Soviet missiles. The prophecy, once confined to dusty Vatican archives, became a lifeline for those certain the world would end not with diplomacy, but divine wrath. It didn't matter that scholars dismissed the text as a Renaissance forgery. In the shadow of annihilation, ambiguity felt like truth. Malachy's words thrived in the fertile soil of fear, their roots feeding on humanity's oldest question: when does it all collapse? By the 1990s, the internet began its alchemical transformation of esoterica. Dr. Lila Voss, a conspiracy theory researcher, recounts in a clipped, urgent tone. Before the web, these ideas were trapped in books or whispered in cult basements. But online they mutated. Malachy's prophecies weren't just read, they were remixed. Forums became digital cathedrals, where users cross-referenced papal lineages with UFO sightings, turning the prophecy of the popes into a choose-your-own-adventure apocalypse. The democratization of doubt had begun. A teenager in Nebraska could now dissect medieval Latin with a Vatican scholar, while QAnon threads stitched Malachy's last pope to satanic cabals. The prophecies, once a niche Catholic curiosity, were now open-source code, endlessly hacked, updated, weaponized. Then came 2012, the year the internet convulsed with millennial frenzy. As the Mayan calendar's end date trended, algorithms resurrected Malachy with algorithmic zeal. Memes juxtaposed Benedict XVI's resignation. The glory of the olive, with apocalyptic stock photos of burning cities. TikTok users morphed the saint's face into glitch art montages set to throbbing bass tracks. The Vatican's hiding the real last pope. A viral post insisted, its logic fractalizing across platforms. The prophecies shed all context, reduced to clickable shards of vibes, haunting, cryptic, irresistibly shareable. Reddit's conspiracy boards became tarot readers, interpreting Malachy's words through the lens of 4chan lore. In one eerie Emma snippet, a user screen named Prophet Zero declared, "Q's Great Awakening is just Malachy 2.0. The storm, the Pope, the purge, it's all there. History's a glitch in the simulation." The thread exploded, upvotes blooming like digital fungi. Yet this was no accident. Social media's architecture, its hunger for engagement, its reward for outrage, transformed Malachy's prophecies into perpetual motion machines. Algorithms blind to truth amplified whatever sparked rage or dread. A 16th century hoax became proof of 21st century deep states. A pope's retirement fueled claims of secret tribunals. The prophecy's very vagueness made them bulletproof. Rome will be destroyed could mean anything. A financial crash, a drone strike, a meme, and in an age of lockdowns and climate disasters, the need for a script, any script, to explain the chaos grew desperate. Psychologists call it apophenia, the mind's compulsion to weave meaning from randomness. But Malachy's resurgence reveals something darker, the internet's ability to globalize delusion. QAnon didn't borrow from the saint. It merged with him, grafting his medieval mysticism onto its canon. Followers now cite papal prophecy, the 112, alongside Q drops, their rhetoric a Frankenstein blend of Latin liturgy and 8chan slang. The result? A feedback loop of belief, where each retweet, each deepfake video breathes new life into a 900-year-old myth. What lingers isn't the question of Malachy's authenticity, but why his ghost haunts us still. The answer lies in the dark mirror of prophecy. It reflects not the future, but the present's sharpest fears. In the 1950s, it was the bomb. In 2012, the end of cycles. Today, it's the erosion of truth itself. Malachy's verses endure because they are empty vessels, and we are desperate to fill them. As long as chaos reigns, there will always be a market for endings. And the internet, that great amplifier, will ensure the next prophecy is just a click away, waiting to twist history into a weapon once again. The digital storm arrived in 2017, a hurricane of pixels and paranoia. QAnon, with its cryptic storm narrative, a promised reckoning where elites would face military tribunals, needed ancient roots to legitimize its chaos. Enter Saint Malachy, the last Pope prophecy, with its ominous finale of Rome's destruction, fused seamlessly with Q's vision of a global purge. It felt like he was speaking directly to us, confesses Jason, a former Q follower, his voice frayed with residual fervor. When Q posted the calm before the storm, I googled storm plus Pope prophecy, and there it was, like destiny. Malachy's 12th century verses, stripped of context, became Q's medieval scaffolding, a way to frame modern chaos as preordained, even holy. Conspiracy forums lit up with side-by-side decodes. Malachy's Peter the Roman became a stand-in for Pope Francis, accused of trafficking children. Q's Great Awakening mirrored the saint's promised judgment. The past wasn't just prologue, it was a weaponized echo. Then came 2020, and the world plunged into pandemic dread. Lockdowns became Malachy's tribulations. Vaccine rollouts, a new dark age, scripted by elites. At anti-vax rallies, Guy Fawkes masks mingled with medieval iconography. The saints warned us about Bill Gates, a protester chants in a leaked audio clip, her voice raw with defiance. Conspiracists reframed Microsoft's ID 2020 initiative, a digital identity project, as the Soch, mark of the beast, foretold. In Malachy's era, memes spliced his face with Bill Gates, the saints' robes photoshopped into lab coats. The irony was grotesque. A man who died ministering to plague victims, now vilified as a patron saint of medical tyranny. Yet the dissonance didn't matter. Malachy's prophecies, like all enduring myths, thrived on contradiction, but the darkest alchemy lay in the far-right's resurrection of the New World Order, a term once tied to 1990s conspiracy radio, now rebranded as a 900-year-old Catholic plot. Influencers on Telegram and Gab traced globalism's roots not to post-Waitu treaties, but to Malachy's era. The Vatican's been planning this since the Crusades. One thread insists, citing the Prophecies as proof of a papal deep state. Dr. Natalia Rivera, a political scientist, dissects the allure. Nostalgia for old truths is catnip for extremists. Malachy's medievalism lets them frame xenophobia as tradition, a return to pure Europe before globalization. The Conspiracies' genius. It collapses time. Modern globalists become heirs to a shadowy medieval cabal. Malachy's vague verses predict everything from the EU to COVID lockdowns. History isn't just rewritten, it's weaponized. Yet this syncretic myth-making exposes a chilling truth. The line between past and present is thinner than a parchment scroll. QAnon's storm and Malachy's apocalypse are twins, born of the same human hunger, to replace randomness with narrative, to crown terror with meaning. We're pattern-seeking animals, Rivera warns. But when you graft that instinct onto algorithms designed to radicalize, you get a feedback loop of delusion. The result? A 21st century cult armed with 12th century dogma, where tweets quoting Malachy's "Rome will be destroyed" rack up likes from users who've never stepped in a church but crave the aesthetic of sacred doom. In the end, Malachy's viral resurrection isn't about prophecy, it's about power. His words, forged or divine, are a Rorschach test for rage. The QAnon adherent, the anti-vaxxer, the far-right idealist, they all see their fears reflected in his ink-stained verses. And as long as the internet exists to amplify those echoes, the cycle will repeat. Another crisis, another prophet, another past scavenged for scraps to explain the unexplainable. The storm never ends. It simply changes names. But why does this loop feel so haunting? Because it whispers the unthinkable. We want to be deceived. Not out of stupidity but vulnerability. Faced with climate collapse, pandemics, or AI's rise, Malachy's 12th century fog offers a perverse solace. Someone saw this coming. Someone knows how it ends. Even if that someone is a ghost, a hoax, a lie, the tragedy isn't that we fall for prophecies, it's that we need to. As long as uncertainty exists, there will be Malachys, shadowy figures offering false maps to those lost in the storm. The names change, Nostradamus, Q, the next viral mystic, but the void they fill remains, a void carved deep in the human soul, where logic falters and the oldest question echoes. What happens next? The answer, of course, is nothing and everything. Prophecy is a Ouroboros, forever devouring its tail, and we, mesmerized by its infinite loop, mistake the teeth for truth. The human mind is a desperate cartographer, forever scribbling lines. Between stars, convinced the chaos must mean something. Dr. Elias Voss, a cognitive scientist, leans into the microphone, his voice a blend of wonder and dread. We're wired for prophecy. When crisis hits, ambiguity becomes a sanctuary. Malachy's "Rome will be destroyed" isn't a prediction, it's a Rorschach blot for our panic. He dissects the brain's betrayal, apophenia, the compulsion to forge patterns from noise and eschatological yearning. The toxic comfort of believing collapse has a script. It's mental alchemy, he says. Turn random words into gold, a reason to breathe when the world burns. Malachy's genius lies in his vagueness, a linguistic sleight of hand that lets pandemics become persecutions and populists divine judges. The prophecies endure not despite their vagueness, but because of it. They are psychological quicksand, designed to swallow every era's fears. This hunger isn't new. It's as ancient as the first campfire tale. In the 16th century, Nostradamus's quatrains about Kista, a river not a dictator, were twisted into prophecies of Hitler. Medieval blood libel myths False claims of Jews murdering Christian children resurged in pogroms and QAnon's adrenochrome fantasies. Even the 1930s radio sermon crackling in archival tape, its preacher thundering about ancient warnings of American ruin, mirrors today's viral prophecies. The script never changes, cloak modern villains in antique robes, and suddenly bigotry feels biblical. History doesn't repeat, it reruns. Yet there's a darker twist. As Dr. Voss notes, prophecy isn't about the future, it's about control. By framing chaos as preordained, believers swap helplessness for purpose. The 1930s preacher wasn't warning of doom, he was selling it, his voice a lifeline to listeners drowning in Depression-era despair. Today, QAnon's storm and anti-vax screeds peddle the same counterfeit power. You're not a victim, you're a warrior in a sacred war. Malachy's prophecies, Nostradamus' riddles, blood libels, lies, they're all keys to the same psychological prison where followers cling to bars they've built themselves. The internet didn't create this cycle, it weaponized it. Algorithms amplify the oldest human flaws, turning apophenia into an epidemic. Reddit threads dissect Malachy's Last Pope alongside 4chan fanfic. TikTok stitches medieval manuscripts to clips of burning 5G towers. The 1930s radio sermon reached hundreds. Today, a single tweet invoking ancient prophecies can infect millions, its half-life eternal in the digital bloodstream. We've democratized delusion. The smoke had barely cleared from the Capitol rotunda when the memes began to circulate. A photoshopped image of Saint Malachy's ghost hovering above the mob. A medieval banner repurposed as a QAnon flag. For some in the crowd, the prophecies weren't just lore, they were a call to arms. Peter the Roman is Pelosi. One rioter later confessed to FBI agents, citing Malachy's Last Pope as proof of a Democrat-led apocalypse. The irony was grotesque. A 12th century forgery, birthed in monastic intrigue, now fueling 21st century insurrection. Dr. Amara Patel, a misinformation scholar, dissects the fallout in a voice frayed by urgency. These conspiracies metastasize because they're armored in history. Debunking them isn't enough. You're not just fighting lies, but the romance of lies. Her solution? Flood the zone with context. Show how Malachy's myth was always a mirror, not of the future, but of our fears. Yet the damage lingers. Families fractured by QAnon's storm, hospitals besieged by anti-vax mobs citing tribulations, politicians quoting Malachy to justify autocracy. The prophecy's real cost is measured in trust corroded, lives upended. Patel's team tracks a surge in medieval-themed conspiracies since 2020, online courses on decoding papal cryptograms, militia groups training under the banner of the New Crusade. It's a feedback loop, she warns. The more chaotic the world feels, the more we romanticize the past as a cipher, and the past always bites back. But there's a flicker of light in this gloom. Historians and psychologists are collaborating like never before, reverse engineering. Conspiracies to expose their wiring. Workshops teach critical thinking through Malachy's case. See how his prophecies flex to fit any crisis. That's not clairvoyance, that's manipulation. Activists flood TikTok with videos juxtaposing medieval manuscripts with QAnon posts, their parallels laid bare. Same tricks, different fonts. Even the Vatican has joined the fray, releasing a statement, unprecedented in its dryness, titled On the Fictional Nature of the So-Called Prophecy of the Popes. It's a start, but as Patel admits, you can't logic someone out of a story that feels true. And so we arrive at the heart of Malachy's haunting, His tale isn't about popes or prophecies, but the raw human ache for narrative. We'd rather a terrifying truth than a meaningless reality, Patel reflects. The internet age didn't invent this hunger, it supercharged it, turning ancient hoaxes into infinite clickbait. Yet in that vulnerability lies hope. If we can weaponize stories, we can also disarm them. The closing notes of the podcast's hopeful melody rise, a minor key resolving into major, as if to say, the past is not a prophecy, it's a warning. Malachy's ghost will linger as long as chaos does, whispering that someone, somewhere, holds the map. But the real rebellion is to stare into the void and say, no one knows. Let's build anyway. The music swells, then fades, a fragile resolve. Against the eternal storm, the whispers of history never truly fade. They linger in the margins, waiting to be resurrected. Dare to delve deeper? The narrator taunts, as if dangling a forbidden key. The prophecy of the popes awaits. If you possess the stomach for its riddles, it's a devilish invitation, this ancient text, a labyrinth of vagueness that has seduced scholars and conspiracists alike. But beware, every click, every shared post, every midnight Google search for Peter the Roman feeds the cycle. The credits roll to a haunting Irish reel, its fiddle strings frayed with centuries of secrets. This is no lullaby, it's a siren song, pulling you back to an era when prophecy and power bled into one. Yet this isn't just a farewell, it's a crossroads, that spectral folk tune. It's the sound of history's ghosts pacing your screen, hungry for new disciples. Subscribe to Ancient Wisdom today, and you'll join a fractured fellowship, part detective, part porn, chasing truths that might not exist. Our next episode dissects how Nostradamus' verses are being weaponized by AI chatbots. Like and share, the narrator murmurs, not as a plea, but a dare. How far will you follow the breadcrumbs? The screen fades, but the melody lingers. A reminder, the past isn't dead. It's not even past. It's a virus mutating in the digital wilds, and you've just been infected.